like the people that are supporting him right now are only supporting him because they're embarrassed that they voted for him, and they're just trying to stick by him because they're too proud to say that they screwed up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's pretty insane. Uh,
It's a sad world, you know.
it is. It is. Well, look, stay tuned. Okay, we got a very special guest who's going to give us his reaction to it. Greta, enjoy your day. Women's Wednesday coming up next, and as we at least I see you, we'll get to you. Guess we're praying for the notorious RBG. She's recovering, just not on the bench. So we hope she hangs in there and makes it. Joining us now, the chair of the Democratic Party, our friend and brother Tom Perez. Tom, Happy New Year, man.
Good morning. Happy New Year to you and to all your listeners, and thank you for all the service you perform, Mark.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for your services as well. Um, I asked a question on our Friday morning fight segment last week who would blink in this shutdown drama first. I think, as ridiculous as Trump's speech was last night, Tom, he blinked a little because they had ginned up this notion he was going to call for a national emergency to get the wall funded, but he actually didn't do that. So I think a part of them must know that this is all just really crazy.
Well, it's beyond crazy. Your listener who was just on was saying where are they getting their facts? Well, the polite way to answer that is out of thin air. There's a less polite way to answer it, but I won't go that direction. And here are the facts. I mean, the State Department, as it relates to what's going on at the southern border, has said, and I quote, "There's no credible evidence of terrorists coming across the border from Mexico." There's a guy named Nick Rasmussen. He was the director of a place called the National Counterterrorism Center. It's a very important intelligence gathering agency in the federal government. He was the director for part of the Obama administration and through the first year of the Trump administration.
Mm-hmm.
This is what he says: "No crisis exists," quote unquote. "Anyone making this argument is most likely guilty of fear-mongering and willfully misleading the American people." So that's not Tom Perez talking. This is the State Department, the Trump State Department, and a person who headed up counterintelligence for both Obama and Trump. Those are the facts. And the fact of the matter is that was a political speech that you might as well put the Trump 2020 campaign logo right there. It
Right.
cheapened the Oval Office. It was preceded by fundraising solicitations that you're
Yeah.
probably aware of, Mark.
Yeah.
And it was then followed by another fundraising solicitation. And the fundraising solicitation they sent out yesterday morning said, "We need patriots." And that's what it was referring to contribute to, I think they called it the Border Security Fund. No, they're contributing to the Trump 2020 campaign. That's what they're doing. This is a president who is in a downward spiral. Whenever distracting Donald is in a downward spiral, he goes to his go-to move in his playbook, which is appeal to his base, the politics of division, the politics of trying to divide Americans along racial, ethnic, immigration lines. And you saw where it got him in the midterm elections. It got him nowhere. And you see where it's getting him now. I agree with you. I think he did show that he blinked last night. And,
Yeah.
and frankly, you're watching Republicans in the Senate say, this is crazy, because it is crazy. We've got food safety inspectors who aren't conducting investigations. We've got people who need rental assistance who aren't going to get it.
Right.
We've got workers who aren't getting paid. We've got people who are going to lose access to food stamps. The only humanitarian crisis at the border is the crisis of young children, 2 young children who have died in preventable death. That's a humanitarian crisis if there is one.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. We also know, don't we, Tom, that the American people are not in agreement with him right now, even over the shutdown, right?
No, they're not buying it. I mean, the polling shows that, and common sense shows that. And I mean, I started, and Mark, you're aware of this. I started my career in federal service as a career prosecutor, doing civil rights cases, hate
Right.
crimes, and police abuse, and I was a federal career worker during the Gingrich shutdown of 1996.
Yeah.
My wife works with homeless people. God bless her, and we love that. She's done that her entire career. I've been in public service. We don't have a sugar mama or sugar daddy When you don't have a paycheck, that's a big deal. And I look at what's happening to federal workers who are being used as pawns in a bigger game. That's just unconscionable, and it's totally unnecessary. I mean, one other point for your listeners is Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer have put forth, and Speaker Pelosi did it this past week, that the bills that passed the House of Representatives, just so your listeners know, these were bills to open up the other agencies, and the bills that they passed in the House, they were already passed in the Senate in December by a vote of something like 92 to 6.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what they have suggested has already been adopted in a bipartisan manner by the Senate. But once again, Mitch McConnell's got a sock in his mouth, not exercising leadership now. And I think what's going to happen, and you already see it, I think Senator Murkowski has come out and said this is foolish, or words to that effect. And I think the Republicans are going to cave here shortly. And, if we really want to work on security issues, what we ought to be doing is investing far more money in combating violent extremism at home. I worked with, as the head of the Civil Rights Division, I worked with people at the National Counterterrorism Center. I worked with people in our national security community. And the biggest threat, or one of the biggest threats that we were confronting and continue to confront, is homegrown terrorism.
Yeah.
These aren't people coming through the southern border. These are, the bad guys overseas have really gotten good at using the internet and other social media to recruit homegrown violent extremists. President Obama invested a lot in combating homegrown violent extremism. Unfortunately, this president hasn't put the emphasis on that. We need to invest more in technologies that will enable us to, identify bad guys. Those are the things that will actually work. A wall. This is like a Monty Python movie. I mean, the wall isn't what's going to do it. These other measures will. And let's stop manufacturing crises. Let's get to work. He's really cheapened the Oval Office by conducting a political speech there. That's conduct unbecoming any president.
Yeah, I would agree. I want to acknowledge too, though, Tom. You talk about you worked in the federal government, the role you play, and I think about you in making this comment. I've been saying this it's several times. I think the other underlying thing we need to think about, the reason Fox News supports the shutdown, the reason he's still pushing for it, it really is not just about this manufactured wall issue, but it goes back to the Gingrich days. His base and Fox don't like the federal government anyway because of the kind of work you did, Tom. They don't like the federal government because it does help people at times. It does enforce civil rights and voting rights laws. They're called tenthers because they favor the 10th Amendment. So they're not making a lot of noise about that now. But I think both you and I know, part of their ideology is they're anti-federal government anyway.
Right. I've never understood why people run for Congress and, you run for something when you don't believe in the institution that you would be working with.
Right.
I've never understood why people do that, but that is exactly what we have seen. When Ted Cruz shut down the government back in, it was 2013 or 2014 when I was labor secretary, he doesn't like government. So, having the federal government not working was music to his ears. But what he learned was the federal government does some really important things for everyday Americans. You want to get your tax refund. You want to go to a federal park. You want to, get your benefits that you're entitled to. And Ted Cruz was putting those at issue. And back in the 90s, I remember it vividly, Newt Gingrich thought that shutting down the government was going to be his golden ticket to having a Republican win the White House. And boy, he was sorely mistaken. And that might have been one of the 2 or 3 biggest mistakes of his flawed speakership. And so I mean, government does really important things for people. That's why I've had the privilege of serving in the Labor Department, the Justice Department, the Department of Health and Human Services, and it really undermines morale. And I'll tell you, one of the long-term effects of the Trump presidency, and it's not something we're going to be able to correct overnight, is the brain drain. There's a lot of good people, including many people that I know, who have just finally, they tried to stick it out, and they finally said, you know what, I can't live with myself, and I've got to leave just for my own credibility and frankly my own sanity. That is, and like at the EPA and elsewhere, that's exactly what the leadership wants. They want the best people to throw up their arms and walk away. Every federal worker I run into that I know from my days of service, I tell them, if you can do it, stick it out, because actually your work has never been more important. The things that you can stop from happening are invaluable, and we need you. It's easy for me to say that because I'm not doing it every day. But my heart bleeds for these federal workers, many of whom live paycheck to paycheck, and the folks at the airport that's a tense job. And when you go into work in the morning as a TSA agent,
that's true.
We want your 1,000% focus to be on making sure a bad guy doesn't get through the metal detector. But when you're sitting there wondering, man, how am I going to feed my family tomorrow? That's a distracted employee, and that's not good. And he could put an end to this right now. You can pass those bills I talked about, and continue to fight with the Homeland Security appropriation, but open the government and have that conversation. There's an easy solution.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. You mentioned, Tom, I want to just ask you this quickly before we go, because you are Labor Secretary. A decent jobs report on last Friday. But isn't that still reflective of the economy Obama built? And aren't we also, I've had economists on the show who've been saying we may want to start bracing ourselves for another economic downturn too. I mean, the stock market is fluctuating like it is. What are your thoughts about all of that?
Yeah, I mean, the pace of job growth has slowed in the Trump administration. That's a fact. By the way, when I see a good jobs report, I'm ecstatic.
Okay.
I want everybody to get to work. When I was labor secretary, Trump was saying that our numbers were cooked. I'm not saying that. That's a load of what.
Right.
But here's the problem. We don't measure success simply by the number of jobs that were created. We measure success by asking the question, are you better off now than you were a month ago, a year ago? And if your salary has gone up $1, your hourly rate, but the cost of prescription drugs and the cost of rent, and the cost of gas have gone up by $2, then you're not better off. And that's the problem we have right now, Mark. We have a recovery where workers are on a good day, all too many millions of workers are treading water. They're not better off than they were a year ago. And when you have these unmitigated attacks, for instance, on the labor movement, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And these attacks on the labor movement are making it harder for workers to have leverage, because employers don't want workers to have, all too many employers. I don't want to paint with an unduly broad brush. There are many good employers out there who are doing the right thing. But all too many employers don't want workers to have a seat at the table. And that is a big part of the challenge. We have way too many people who are struggling to make ends meet, or they're working 2 jobs to get by. And that's the challenge of this recovery. And unless we address that, this president refuses to raise the minimum wage. This president, there are people who are one car repair bill away from being destitute, or one healthcare emergency away from being destitute. And now they want to take away your healthcare. and they have done nothing about the exorbitant costs of prescription drugs. That is a major source of angst for everyday Americans. That's what Democrats are fighting for. So again, I'm heartened when I see a good jobs report. I want to see a good jobs report every month. But what I also want to make sure we do is make sure that people have access to quality, affordable health care. And this administration is doing just the opposite. I want to make sure that college is affordable for people. And this administration is doing just the opposite. I want to make sure that early childhood education is accessible. And we were fighting for that. And Democratic governors are fighting for that. And this administration is doing next to nothing about that as well. And that's why you see the angst that so many people feel across this country. This economy ain't working for all too many people. And this reckless tax cut from a year ago, people have seen through it. That was a massive boon for people who didn't need it. And that's the reality. And it's now the mortgage that our children and our children's children will be paying for a long time to come.
Yeah, they definitely got to pay that mortgage. And just want to mention, too, this speech last night in the midst of the news about Veselnitskaya and Manafort. I mean, we've never seen anything like this in terms of a scandal of a presidency and more evidence of conspiracy with a foreign government. You almost wonder whether he does some of these things he does, like the speech last night, to distract the American public.
Well,
because that would have been that would have been the biggest headline yesterday. Not his speech, but the Manafort and Veselnitskaya revelations.
Yep. Well, Mark, I have said this more than once, and I didn't just say it today.
Okay.
Whenever the wagons are circling the most on Donald Trump, he does distracting Donald, and he goes to the number one play in his playbook, which is the immigration fear-mongering distraction. Look what happened in the midterms. Everything was imploding for them. So what did they do? Every day was about the caravans, trying to distract attention. It didn't work. You see it now. If you want to watch a movie that is somewhat relevant to today, it's a funny movie, but it's no laughing matter. It's the movie Canadian Bacon.
Okay.
It was John Candy's last movie.
Right.
It was about a president. It was a comedy. It was about a president who was in the midst of a scandal, so he needed to invent a distraction. So he said that the Canadians were about to invade America, and he dispatched John Candy to help defend America against a Canadian effort to infiltrate the United States. Canadian Bacon, John Candy's last movie.
I vaguely remember that.
Old.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening here. We have a healthcare crisis in this country. We have a president who is embroiled in a culture of corruption. How many cabinet officials have been involved in cultures of corruption and scandal, and so you have to distract, and that's what he's doing day in and day out.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of what we're seeing across this administration. So yes, what we saw yesterday was again distracting Donald at his worst, and it's really when the politics of fear. That's going to be his playbook heading into the presidential. What we saw in the last month of the run-up to the midterm election is exactly what you're going to see. That's his playbook. That's the only play in his playbook is distract people, divide people.
Yeah.
That is the politics of Donald Trump. And lie.
Yeah, all the way.
We cannot normalize in this country leaders who lie. We cannot normalize leaders who not only tolerate, but they encourage corrupt behavior by their underlings. There was not a whiff of scandal in the Obama administration. Scandal was when he wore a tan suit one summer day.
That's right. That was the biggest scandal.
That was the definition of scandal in the Obama world.
The audacity of taupe is what they called it.
Yeah. I remember that, my friend.
Yeah.
So,
I vaguely remember Canadian Bacon. I'm glad you reminded us of that. So, it's distracting Donald. That the first
after the first sentence of his speech last night, I was like, oh, this is distracting Donald again.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
well,
Tom,
always a pleasure to be with you, Mark.
hey man, looking forward
And
to
your
a great
listeners.
to a great 2019, man. We got a lot of work to do. We appreciate you, my brother.
Well, thank you. We're working hard. We're halfway up the mountain, but we've got a long climb to go, and we're organizing everywhere, and we're leading with our values. And one of our values is that we're fighting for everyone, and we believe that when we come together and recognize that our diversity is our greatest strength, that's when we're at our best, and
Amen.
that's what we're fighting for.
Amen. Tom Perez, Chair of the Democratic Party. Thank you, Tom, man. Enjoy your day. And love to the family, too, my brother, okay?
I sure. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care now. 866-99-SIRIUS, 866-997.